One nation bound in freedom, peace, and unity. Nigeria is considered a source, transit, and destination country when it comes to human trafficking. And according to the latest reports, Nigeria ranks 32nd out of 167 countries that were recently assessed. It is believed that Nigeria has 1.38 million slaves within the country. I believe that number is considerably higher. But what we are most infamously known for is for the sex trafficking of our women abroad, out of Nigeria into Europe. This atrocity of epic proportions, which strips bare the souls of our women and girls, is what my amazing team and I humbly devote our lives to eradicating. But in order to do this work, I first had to look at myself, to look at the women and girls that we partner with, to look at Nigeria and identify 3 lies that we've told ourselves about the value of our women and girls and how that has led to us becoming infamously known around the world on the issue of sex trafficking. Because at the end of the day, only by confronting these lies, debunking them, and replacing them with the truth, will we be able to emancipate ourselves from mental slavery. Now, several years ago, my mother went to visit my grandfather at his home on the famous Igun Street in Benin. She arrived to find a young girl who could not have been more than 16 or 17 years old, cowering in the corner. When my mother inquired from her father as to who this child was, my grandfather casually informed her that she had been given to him as a gift. A human being, a gift. And so because my grandfather was a person of influence, some father in his infinite wisdom decided to gift him his daughter. And so because she was now his property, he was free to do with her as he pleased. Anybody who knows my mother knows that it didn't take my mother long before she carried that small girl. Oh, yeah, pack your bags, my dear. You will not kill my father. But she was making a point. She was making a point. And so, but my grandfather's response to that, he was indifferent. Because you see, this was not the first or the last time that something like this would happen. I think about that little girl who's now a woman often, and I wonder what became the story of her life. It is one of many stories that has haunted me over the years. Because the reality is that we have a complicated, tortured relationship with slavery and the devaluation of human bodies here in Nigeria. What is the value of human life here? It is undeniable that entrenched somewhere deep in the great Benin Kingdom's rich, profound history is a page that's buried deep in the 15th to the 18th centuries that reveals our entrenched involvement in the transatlantic slave trade. Along with ivory and palm oil and pepper, we sold our female captives of war. As the demand from the West grew, we eventually embarked on the sale of our own women and then men, because you see, everything and everyone has a price. That evaluation and devaluation of our women and girls, the idea of women being bartered for and traded, has morphed over varying forms over the years, but it still remains prevalent in our society. It's the reason why we're comfortable trading our women in marriage for what we refer to as a bride price. It is the reason why, even in 2018, one of our teenage survivors, a 17-year-old girl, was used as what we wittingly call money wife, collateral, when her father was unable to repay a debt to a man 50 years her senior. It is the reason why many of our young women are forced to exchange sex for marks in university, #MonikaOsaige, and sex for food in our internally displaced persons camps. Because you see, our society has taught us that every woman, every young girl has a financial value. And so it's no wonder that in Edo State, many of our impoverished young women have adopted this depraved value system that our long history, our society, our traditions over centuries has used to define them. It is no wonder that many of them have started to view prostitution as an alternative to poverty. It is no wonder that annually, tens of thousands of our young people are willing to risk their lives in the cemetery that is the Sahara Desert, in the hell that is Libya, and in the graveyard that is the Mediterranean Sea, only to then be commoditized in Europe, to be sold and recycled over and over again. In fact, it is well documented that 90%, over 90% of the women who are actually being trafficked for sex from Nigeria are from Edo State, most of them voluntarily and with consent. 1 in every 3 of our young women in Edo has been recruited. Sex trafficking overseas, particularly when it happens with consent, is highly concentrated in Edo State. But Edo State is not the poorest state in the country. We're not the least educated, nor do we have the fewest job opportunities. So why is that? Why would so many of our young women volunteer to be trafficked, even knowing that they may be working in prostitution? It is because many of them have embraced the first lie, that our value as women is inextricably tied to our sexuality. We have become enslaved to this lie that is deeply embedded in the culture in Edo State, and is literally eradicating a significant portion of a generation of young women between the ages of 15 to 24 in our country. But what if we were to start to speak the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth? What if we change the narrative, engage in a mindset reset, a paradigm shift, and instead of being a society that values wealth and class and material things, choose to value our women and girls simply because they are worthy of value? Because you see, only when we can take the price tag off of our girls and convince them and convince their impoverished mothers, many of whom are the primary negotiators of the contracts with the traffickers, will we then be able to convince them that their lives are actually more valuable here in Nigeria than in broken pieces in Italy. You know, I'm fortunate enough that my work with Pathfinders allows me to sound the alarm on the issue of modern-day slavery all around the world. Last May, I boarded a flight from London to Lagos, and I happened to be sitting next to a white English businessman who struck up a casual conversation. "And where in Nigeria are you from, young lady?" "Edo State," I said proudly. But the pointedness of his very next question alarmed me. "And what exactly is your country doing about your sex trafficking problem?" So fast forward a year to this past May, I was in Italy to speak about our prevention and rehabilitation efforts. And after a busy day, I casually strolled through an open-air market looking for a gift for my mother. On numerous occasions, and many women who are here, you guys know what it's like when you're walking through a market, I was stopped and prodded and jabbed by merchants hawking their wares. And again, I was casually asked the same question. "Ciao, bella, where are you from?" When I finally decided to respond, I actually said rather angrily, "I'm from Nigeria." "Where in Nigeria?" "Edo State." Immediately canvassing my body up and down, the guy leaned in. "You here for job?" I was insulted. And simultaneously, I was ashamed. Because you see, our reputation as Edo women, as Nigerian women, precedes us. And to have other people tell it, the problem of sex trafficking in Nigeria is one that is insurmountable. In Edo State, sex trafficking is such a part of our functioning economy that our local Western Union is one of the busiest in the world. In fact, one researcher found that 80% of the homes in Edo State are somehow affiliated with trafficking. 80%. That means a large percentage of our young women have grown up defining success by the minute percentage of women who have traveled abroad, paid off their debt to their trafficker, are now madames of their own and therefore able to send remittances to support their families back in Nigeria. In fact, for our working poor, Italy has become synonymous with lifting one's family out of abject poverty. And so as a result, we too have bought into the second lie, that eradicating trafficking in Nigeria, particularly in Edo State, is an insurmountable feat. Beniges, na so them be.